it's time to bring in our chair of stormwater management. Lorraine, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
We can, loud and clear. Welcome.
Great. Okay. Hi, everybody. I'm Lorraine Prince. I'm the Tri-County Sustainability person watching over the stormwater management topic for our group. And now we're going to talk about stormwater, specifically stormwater runoff. More than ever, stormwater has meant rainwater flooding into our streets and pollution running through those streets into our waterways. One solution recently handed down by state authorities requires all municipalities to handle runoff using green stormwater infrastructure solutions that deal with rain where it falls rather than putting it into the streets. But how to pay for all that, right? Another solution, establishing a stormwater utility, is presented today by Brianne Callahan, the Stormwater Manager at New Jersey Future, and Molly Riley, Water Quality Coordinator at the New Jersey League of Conservation Voters. Brianne and Molly, are you ready to tell us more?
Sure. Hi, Lorraine. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Sorry, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay, great. I'd like to share my screen. So let me know if you can see.
It's visible, yes.
Perfect. All right, great. So as Lorraine mentioned, my name is Brianne Callahan. I'm the Stormwater Manager at New Jersey Future. One of my partners, Molly Riley, is from New Jersey League of Conservation Voters, and she's going to be speaking a little bit further on in the presentation. But I would love to talk about, stormwater in the context of stormwater utilities, as Lorraine just mentioned. So with that, I'll get started. So I work for New Jersey Future. To give you a little bit of background, New Jersey Future really envisions healthy places for residents to live, work, and play, where communities have safe streets and clean waterways that are free from flooding and pollution. And that's why we're here to talk to you tonight. We're a nonprofit, nonpartisan organization, and we're based out of Trenton, New Jersey, and we work throughout the entire state pretty much on land use and infrastructure issues, and stormwater utilities is one of our main programs. So tonight, I really want to go through current stormwater funding practices, a brief introduction to stormwater utilities, some resources that are available to municipalities, and really how you can get started. So without a stormwater utility, as it is now, the price of managing stormwater is really included in other government costs. Typically, these costs are included in sewer fees or paid for through property taxes. And as people are experiencing, widespread throughout the state, this often leads through underinvestment in managing stormwater. And, the strategy is, fix things when they are becoming broken. And really it's deferred maintenance to focus on more high profile needs that municipalities, need to focus on. So unfortunately, residents are bearing the brunt of all the flooding, traffic congestion, water pollution, and property damage. So what are our options? Well, we can do nothing. But at this point, with all the flooding, especially with Hurricane Ida and storms that preceded it, doing nothing really isn't an option now. You can increase property taxes. That's something, folks definitely don't want to do. You can increase your sewer rates, another thing that folks don't always want to do, or you can create a stormwater utility. So really it's a tool to use to pay for stormwater. So specifically, what is it? It's a stormwater is a dedicated funding mechanism, and it's specifically enacted to address stormwater issues. So it's similar to any other, utility or water, sewer, electric, in that you're paying for what you're using. It's user fee based. And our New Jersey legislation provides that the funds collected specifically can only be used to pay for stormwater purposes. So folks are often concerned about, money grab where, funds can be transferred, but that specifically is not allowed under this legislation. So you might be wondering, who does this already? Well, there are close to 2,000 stormwater utilities throughout the United States. And we're talking, diverse communities serving, rural and urban, ranging in size from 88 people in a small municipality in Florida to 3 million people in Los Angeles. So it really, and if you look at the map here on my slide, you'll see that it's, all across the country. And it doesn't really, matter if it's a more, conservative state or whether it's a more, democratic state. If you look at all the states listed here, you'll see the number of utilities, and it really is based off of folks that really need to manage their stormwater. So taking a step back, I'd like to speak a little bit about our enabling legislation in New Jersey. The basic information about the mechanics of a stormwater utility. So the Clean Stormwater and Flood Reduction Act was signed into law by Governor Murphy in 2019. The law is permissive, which is really important to remember, meaning that it allows but doesn't require governments to establish stormwater utilities. So really, we're thinking about this as a tool for municipalities to be able to utilize. If established, these stormwater utilities are required to collect fees based on the amount of stormwater that the property generates. So typically, this is a function of how much hard or impervious surfaces are on a property. So it strictly is a user fee. And in terms of establishment, utilities can be created by municipalities, counties, groups of municipalities, and even sewerage and improvement authorities. So additional infrastructure in that respect is not needed. Often folks are concerned about another layer of bureaucracy, and that is something that is not required. And as I mentioned earlier, the funds generated from the utility fees can only be dedicated to stormwater management and can't be used for any other purposes. Okay, so what's so great about all of this? Well, a stormwater utility is equitable, which is really important. As we discussed, as I mentioned a few minutes ago, a property is assessed the stormwater fee based on the amount of impervious cover that it has. So it's a user fee. It means that properties that generate stormwater pay for their contribution to the problem. And right now, the way the system is set up, stormwater costs are recovered through property taxes, or taxes or sewer charges. Tax exempt properties or properties that don't have any water sewer, like large parking lots, they actually don't pay into the stormwater system. And you think about it, a large parking lot is really creating the majority of stormwater, and they're really overloading the system. And if it's based on, if the system and stormwater management is based on water sewer rates, they're not paying anything. They don't have sinks and toilets and things like that. So the next thing is that a stormwater utility is dedicated and stable. All those times that you're putting off repairs and things like that because you just don't have the funds is completely fixed by the stormwater utility. Well, it's not completely fixed, but it's a way to get around that. And you can plan ahead for the improvements that you need to make. Instead of just fixing things when they break, you can plan ahead and say, okay, well, we have this steady, dedicated stream of funding that we'll be able to utilize for these costs and for these projects. And the other thing to think about is New Jersey has a statutory budget cap, which limits municipal increases to 2% per year for operational spending. And with a stormwater utility, you can actually take all the stormwater operations and maintenance costs out of the 2% cap. It would be taken out of the 2% cap and put into the stormwater utility. So it gives municipalities more room under the cap to be able to pay for other things that they need in the municipality. For emergency services or education or any of the other things that, municipalities are continually strapped for. And it's really important to know that under New Jersey law, the only exemption in a stormwater utility is for active agricultural and horticultural land. So everyone would be paying their, user fee based on the amount of surfaces. This includes, state agencies, this includes and state properties, this state-owned properties, it includes county properties, it includes federal properties and roads and things like that. So all of these things would be taken into consideration. Okay, so I'm going to try and quickly go through some of the other things that financially that are important. It also addresses program funding gaps. So if you're looking at your stormwater management plan and realizing, okay, catch basins are not getting cleaned and certain things aren't getting replaced, you can really put yourself on a program and figure out, what your necessary capital improvements are and really plan ahead, like I mentioned a little bit earlier, instead of, emergency services. And then the other thing is you can leverage the funding. Municipalities can leverage the funding source because you're going to have a steady stream of dedicated funding to be able to access other avenues for funding for your capital projects. There's monies available through the New Jersey Infrastructure Bank, some federal grants, obviously all of the money that's coming in through the bipartisan infrastructure bill and the ARPA funding. That's also another way, to be able to leverage those funds to get more projects and more things done for your community. Okay. So what are these things that the utility can pay for? It pays for all stormwater management costs. So that includes establishment of the actual utility itself. It includes capital expenditures, which can also include planning and design, engineering, and even acquisition. It can pay for operations and maintenance, like I mentioned before. That includes service requests, street sweeping, a lot of the things that you think about when you think about stormwater management, and then various other things. So anything that you can relate to stormwater management is an eligible cost for the utility. So I think I'm running a little bit long here. So I'm going to keep moving a little bit quicker through these slides, and I'd be happy to answer any questions afterwards. But I have this slide here about in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, and you can take a look at it. But the pie charts reflect what residential versus non-residential customers would pay based on water sewer fees versus what they would pay based on with a stormwater utility. And it's pretty impressive. With a stormwater user fee, the residential customers would pay 23% of the costs. Whereas, when the stormwater management was supported through property taxes, the residential customers actually paid 48%. So really it's thinking about how you're paying for your stormwater management and who's using the system. Another thing that I really want to talk about is credits. So when designing a stormwater utility, municipalities are required by law to design a credit system. So folks can lower their costs and their user fee if they implement best practices. They can earn a credit because they would actually be treating the stormwater on their property before it actually gets to the system. So credits are very important. So just speaking briefly about the process, where do you start? Well, there are a bunch of different milestones. Here are the 8 basic steps to establishing a stormwater utility. Really starting out and focusing on number 1 and number 2, getting your local officials involved, establishing a group of internal experts, and then getting all the way down to implementation. So I'm going to talk about that a little bit more in a minute. So these are the important questions that you want to answer when you get started. What are the problems that are really facing your community? What are your community's goals for managing stormwater? Do you need a different structure? Do you need more resources? What the cost of inaction is. If you're talking about, business interruption and you're talking about property damage, there are a lot of things, especially with Ida, there are places that flooded that don't normally flood. So it's not that, everybody is pretty much affected by, the increased amount of rainfall that we've been experiencing. So these are the important questions to really start thinking about when you get started. And, if you take a look at this is more of a detailed look at what the process might look like and what a feasibility study would look like. So it really starts out with those questions that I just talked about, assessing the problems and needs that you have, figuring out how much you actually spend, then developing, your financial plan, figuring out your impervious surface area. You want to go through all of this, and really what happens to go through all of this, municipalities really typically hire a consultant to take a look at all of these things, who can kind of figure out what infrastructure you have in place that you can use. And once you go through the feasibility study to figure out, yes or no, that's kind of your, decision point as to whether a stormwater utility is a really good option for your community, and whether it's a good tool to enhance the services that you need, to solve a lot of the problems, establish the dedicated funding to better leverage additional grant and loan monies. So really taking a look at all those steps and getting some assistance to go through that is really important. And then all of this is available on the Stormwater Utility Resource Center. So I'm going to drop the link in the chat after I'm done talking, but New Jersey Future and Flood Defense New Jersey has put together the Stormwater Utility Resource Center, and it's stormwaterutilities.njfuture.org. And it has all of this information, the technical resources to be able to start investigating a stormwater utility. It includes a lot of the slides and information that I just mentioned before. And it also includes what funding options are available, and basic information about stormwater utilities and stormwater in general, including why it's important and key benefits, that sort of a thing. I'd also like to mention that public outreach is extremely key to this entire process. So one of the things on the Stormwater Utility Resource Center is a very specific outline of the amount of potential meetings and who the stakeholders would be for a particular municipality. And it actually goes meeting by meeting. So I'm going to pass it over to Molly in a second, but I also wanted to point out that New Jersey Future has a bunch of resources that are available if you bring this to your municipality and they're interested in investigating. We have a pro bono consultant list of municipalities, or consultants who've agreed to sit with municipalities to really help them get started. We are launching a peer learning exchange where you can speak with other municipalities investigating in New Jersey, and also speak with mentor municipalities outside of New Jersey who've done it before. And we have ongoing technical assistance as well, to speak with municipalities. I'm happy to speak with any municipalities about how they get started. So with that, I'd like to hand it off to Molly.
Thanks, Bree. I'm also going to share my screen, so I think you just, okay. Can everyone see this okay?
Yes, looks good.
Thank you. Okay, so hi everyone, I'm Molly Riley. I'm the Water Quality Coordinator for New Jersey League of Conservation Voters. New Jersey LCV is the statewide political voice for the environment. We are a nonpartisan nonprofit. We work to educate communities on a variety of local issues, and also work to elect environmentally responsible champions to both state and local office. And we are the convener for Flood Defense New Jersey. I'm going to just walk through some of the important considerations about developing a stormwater utility and how it can be beneficial, how we can help, especially with community education and our grant program that we have. So Flood Defense New Jersey is a coalition of state and local nonprofits. It includes Bree and New Jersey Future. We're working statewide on helping educate communities on best practices for stormwater management, and learn more about this very adaptable tool of stormwater utilities. We also work on educating people about the benefits of things like green infrastructure, which is a great way to try and absorb stormwater like a sponge and contain and filter the water. Things you may be familiar with, like rain gardens, permeable pavement, bioswales, etc. And green infrastructure is also very cost effective. It can realize about $7 to $27 in ancillary benefits. It can improve health outcomes with access to clean water, increase community property values because you're not having as much flooding issues, and reducing the flood damage costs as well as insurance costs. So these are all things that we try and help educate folks about. So New Jersey has like a very big stormwater problem. I think that's, very clear about why we're talking here tonight. I just wanted to underscore a couple things that maybe you guys weren't aware of. We are the most densely developed state, so 12% is impervious area. So that is a big contributor to why we have so much nuisance flooding. And you've probably seen a lot in the news lately with our increased storms severity. This has become very expensive, and municipalities' budgets are often strained by their stormwater management. New Jersey statewide has a $16 billion stormwater infrastructure problem with no dedicated funding source, and more people are experiencing 100-year floods within the terms of their 30-year mortgage. So it's pretty severe. And the problem is getting worse. Stormwater carries heavy metals and carcinogens and E. coli, and that makes the water more expensive to treat. And then, obviously the damages associated with stormwater is pretty severe. And we can see this is a picture from just Hurricane Ida recently that flooded out the stadium over in Somerset County, which was, I don't think we've seen anything like that in New Jersey yet. And then the chart from the Rutgers Climate Institute kind of shows us where these trends are going for why we really need to be thinking more critically about our stormwater management issue. Something I also wanted to highlight with stormwater management and the benefits of stormwater utilities is that it's financially equitable. So it follows like a polluter's pay system or a pay your share system. And racial equity is a big piece of this puzzle as well. Historic redlining based on 1930s flood maps means that more communities of color are in areas that are going to be more impacted by floods and more likely to have antiquated infrastructure, like a combined sewer overflow. Combined sewer overflows are pretty common in New Jersey. We have about 213 of them, 21 municipalities, and they serve about 1.4 million residents. And a stormwater a CSO basically combines the sewage system and stormwater system. So the storm drain empties into the sewer, and if it rains too much in a short amount of time, it overflows and you get untreated sewage in the streets. And this can disproportionately, again, it's affecting communities of color, but it happens statewide. And we need basically mechanisms to improve our antiquated infrastructure. And when we can use a system like stormwater utilities, it can help address both a social equity problem as well as an environmental hazard. So at Flood Defense New Jersey, we do a grant program that is specifically for municipalities in the Delaware River watershed. Delaware River watershed is really important to our state's reserves for drinking water. So that's one of the reasons we're trying to prioritize communities in this region. They also feed a lot of delicate ecosystems like the Pinelands is many of your backyards, and also a big source of our drinking water. And we've given, so far we've given grants to a town in Atlantic County, as well as Camden City. But as you can see from the map of where the watershed is, this could be a great option for towns in Camden, Gloucester, and Burlington counties. So the RFP requirements for our grant, we want communities to do a impervious cover analysis. So looking at how much, parking lots, roofs, streets, how much are all the surfaces, and where are they located, and who owns them, and that can help us to break down what your rates would be like for a stormwater fee, and then also create recommendations for projects such as green infrastructure installation, which I highlighted why that is so beneficial for communities to be doing, as well as create a financial analysis on what municipality is currently spending on stormwater management and what your fee calculation can look like. So what your homeowner fee would be like, what a business fee would be like, and then that can actually really help your decision making. And this would all be done with a lot of stakeholder input, going out and talking to communities, which is something that we've been doing a lot on the ground, inviting people to meetings, sitting down and walking them through the whole process. And then this analysis helps create an understanding of what your cost savings would be if you did move forward with a stormwater utility. So these are all things that we would look to have in the RFP for the grant. So other benefits of doing a study. So Sustainable Jersey actually has their certification programs, one of which is the Water Gold standard. And Water Gold is really based around the idea of mapping and monitoring your stormwater and your water systems in your community. And no one has a Water Gold program yet, but the information provided by the feasibility study can get you on track to be certified as Water Gold. And points are also available for community outreach and education projects. So if you were like, hey, Molly, Bree, yeah, I'd love for you to come do an event or a talk with our environmental commission, green team, mayor, you name it, these are things you can get points and credits for. And this is also really vital information for updating the municipal master plan. Senate Bill 2607 was signed in 2021, so just this past year, and it requires communities to start including climate change related hazards, like their vulnerability assessments, into your master plan. And this can be complex, but the information from a study can help you get on track with that, as well as compliance with your DEP stormwater requirements that the new rules just dropped in March of 2021. And it can also identify areas of waste and increase efficiency. So even if you're not totally on board with getting a stormwater utility in place, this is all stuff you can use from the stormwater feasibility study, and you can still understand a lot better about how you're currently managing your stormwater and where you can go from there. So just wanted to point out a couple of quick things before I wrapped up. On our website, you can view all of our articles, our various stormwater webinars. We covered a lot of different topics with stormwater, including how a feasibility study works. You can get a copy of our grant RFP there as well. Schedule one-on-ones with us, which is something Bree mentioned as well. We'll dive more into your community-specific concerns. Sorry. Organize community education events for your municipality. Rutgers Green Infrastructure Champions Program. This is something I'd really love for all of you to be aware of, because the enrollment starts soon, but if you want to become somebody who's great at bringing green infrastructure to your municipality, this is a great way to get started. It's $10 a class. You need 5 for the certification, but it's opening up on their website, which I have linked there as well. And then also just wanted to underscore the peer-to-peer network to connect with a town that has a stormwater utility, and the peers are matched based on similar size, geography. So we're comparing apples to apples, not apples to oranges. So it can really help you know better about what your benefits can be, what your fee structure be like, and how they went about their stakeholder engagement process as well. So it's all really useful information. If you have questions, we're happy to chat anytime. So thank you all very much.